Hi everyone, this is Kyle, and I have this one article here that I thought was interesting I wanted to go over. This is from boundingintocomics.com. Castlevania Nocturne director Samuel Deets disavows Netflix's marketing insulting of Richter Belmont. It was disrespectful to the story, character, fans, and to us as creators. I mean, there's going to be probably a few little different things here that I want to go into. I mean, I think the stuff here in this article, it sums up a good number of the problems with stuff that's being made today. Now, me, to start off, just for the record, I have not watched this Castlevania Nocturne movie. I mean, I started watching some anime very recently, mainly because everything coming out of Hollywood I'm not really a fan of, and so I kind of turned to anime for a lot of my entertainment. I started watching two anime shows a couple years or so ago. One of them, Attack on Titan, that is a great show. I mean, real well-written show, and it's the kind of show where if you watch it again a second time, you're going to notice all sorts of things that you didn't notice the first time around. And then the other show that I watched was Castlevania. I mean, at a glance, it looked interesting, so I said, okay, I'm going to watch it. I mean, I watched it up to Season 3, and then Season 4, I wasn't really that interested in, and I'll go into that in a little bit. But those of you who've watched all of the original Castlevania show, or the first Castlevania show they made, you might guess a little bit of why I stopped watching it. Alright, so I'm going to go into this article here. Despite the fact that the series itself treats the source material with arguably worse level of care, director Samuel Deets has decried Netflix's recent attempt to market Castlevania Nocturne by publicly insulting its lead protagonist, fan favorite vampire slayer Richter Belmont. Now folks, my understanding, there's two pronunciations for this word here. There's the American pronunciation Richter, and then there's, I think, German pronunciation Richter. From what I see, it's pronounced Richter. From what I've seen of trailers, again, for the record, I have not watched this show, but from what I saw trailers, they pronounce his name Richter, and yet it looks like, I mean, this is clearly something that takes place, I think, in Europe, which makes me think that it should be pronounced Richter. I don't know. If any of you have an explanation on this, you tell me. I'll move on here. The insult in question was made by the series' official Twitter account on September 30th, was itself inspired by a series of events which begin in Nocturne's fourth episode, Horrors of the Earth. Therein, during Richter, Maria, and Annette's mission to rescue the latter's captured companion Eduard, the group find themselves in a surprise confrontation with the vampire Ulrox, otherwise known as the beast that ended the life of Richter's mother. Yeah, I keep thinking logically, if this is something that takes place in Europe, because it's like vampires, I keep thinking it would be pronounced Richter, but, I don't know. Unprepared to so suddenly find himself face to face with his mother's killer, Richter soon experiences a bout of PTSD, the pain of which causes himself to turn tail and abandon the mission. So the main character is a bit of a coward then? As he does, annoyed by his sudden exit, Annette accuses the traumatized Belmont of being nothing more than a run-of-the-mill coward. I mean, you could probably say it's another case of the male character gets emasculated, gets turned weak or whatever. I mean, it's a common thing you're seeing with men in stories now. Later on in Nocturne's 6th episode, Guilty Men to be Judged, Annette vents her frustration over the event to the spirit of her mentor Cecile. Still annoyed with Richter's quick exit, Annette at one point laments how the Belmont boy turns out to be useless as F. I don't think I can say this word here. I'm going to say a couple things about just this phrase here. I mean, this is a couple problems that I have with stuff being made today. Number one, this phrase here, useless as F. I mean, that's a modern phrase that people use. I mean, I know Castlevania, I mean, it essentially takes place in like, what, 1500s or 1600s? If I remember, the first Castlevania show they made, or the one that had Dracula in it, Dracula, Alucard, and whoever else. I mean, that one, was it Wallachia? That was taking place, I think it was like 1500s, 1533 or something like that off the top of my head. People talk differently in different time periods, and here you're hearing phrases, modern phrases like this. When it's a different time period and I hear people talking the way people talk today, that takes me out of the story. And then secondly, I mean, there was somebody who I think put it well, this other problem that I have with a lot of that stuff that's coming out today. I forget who it was, but they essentially said that stories now, or a good number of stories now, are being written essentially by 12-year-olds that just discovered the F word. I mean, I tell you, the level of vulgarity that you see in a lot of shows now, a lot of like fantasy shows or a lot of things like that, it takes me out of a story too. Now, I mean, if there's a little bit of swearing or cussing, that's fine. But I mean, I'll make a comparison here. Again, the first two anime shows that I started watching, Attack on Titan and Castlevania, In Attack on Titan, people do swear once in a while there, but it's essentially just someone saying damn it once in a while. And they say that like once per episode, probably at most. And that's it. And damn is basically the only cuss word that you hear, if I remember correctly. Castlevania, on the other hand, like they're swearing every 3-4 sentences practically, and it's, you've got F-bombs in there, you got all kinds of other words and stuff like that. I mean, in real life, everybody swears all the time. Yeah, I know that, you know that. But when I read a book and I see cuss words in there, it looks kind of awkward. And when I'm watching a movie or show, I mean, if you hear a swear word once in a while, that fine, I can deal with that. But if the writers cannot go 3 or 4 sentences without dropping an F-bomb in there at some point, that takes me out of it. Like, it to me, it's needless. Kind of makes me think maybe they don't have that great a vocabulary. It's one reason why I like Lord of the Rings so much better than Game of Thrones. Because in Game of Thrones, there were a lot of times where like they could not go a few sentences without dropping an F-bomb or dropping all that kinds of other colorful words in there. And yeah, it did annoy me. I mean, I know The Witcher had a good number of swearing in there too, but I'm using Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones here as a comparison, because I think Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, they're in the fantasy genre. Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, they're kind of the two major ends of the spectrum. Game of Thrones is the modern, gray, complex kind of story. People talk in a lot of modern phrases and stuff like that. There's a lot of swearing in there. Lord of the Rings, there's no swearing at all. The dialect is unique. It's more traditional, classic, good and evil sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, the Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, they're kind of polar opposites if you ask me. Lord of the Rings is better. But yeah, I mean, this is one problem that I have with a lot of stuff being made today. I mean, the one way I heard it put, again, is way I heard it put by, I forget who, but shows and stories are being written by 12-year-olds that just discovered the F word. They're not capable of going like 3 sentences without swearing, and yeah, it's one thing that annoys me. I'll continue. He literally ran away, she then proclaims, ran away. For some reason, and this is another real good point here, for some reason, believing this moment to be a selling point for Nocturne, despite the fact that its source material, Castlevania Rondo of Blood, is specifically a Richter-centric adventure, the official Netflix Castlevania account shared Annette's dismissal of the hot-headed hero and added, "No matter the timeline, the Belmonts stay getting humbled by their magic companions." Okay, I have a few things to say about this. Now, number one, this comment right here, yes, this is insulting. If there's a lot of fans of Richter Belmont, why would you insult that character? I mean, it makes 0 sense. And it goes back to this fact that the people working on these shows or movies or whatever, they do not respect the source material at all. I go back to The Witcher. Word was that the writers for The Witcher, they were making fun of the source material. They're doing a live-action remake of the original Disney Snow White movie, and the main actress in that movie, she's calling it dated. She's saying the prince is a stalker, and word we hear is Disney's making a lot of changes to that. Again, no respect for the original source material. Now granted, just for the record, the original Snow White movie, it came from its own fairy tale from the Grimm brothers, and one interesting fact, Tolkien, John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, he hated the original Disney Snow White movie. He liked Snow White, but he did not like how the dwarves were portrayed, as I remember. So I mean, that's just one interesting fact. And speaking of Tolkien, Amazon made a Rings of Power show. Again, no respect for the source material. I mean, that Rings of Power show was probably the most blatantly disrespectful thing ever made, and that's saying something, because every adaptation Hollywood makes now, they're intentionally changing everything. And as the writer of this article puts it, this insulting of Richter Belmont, they're using that as a selling point. I mean, these people are kind of stupid. They think that insulting beloved characters is going to get people to want to see the show. No, it is not. They want to see Richter Belmont as he was originally written. Well, Castlevania is originally, a video game, if I'm correct. But yeah, whenever they make an adaptation of a game or a book or comic or whatever, fans, they want to see those characters portrayed as they were originally written. I mean, people working in studios deciding to insult those original loved characters, or deciding to change them and then thinking that's going to be a selling point, that's going to cause people to be interested in seeing that show or movie that they're making. I mean, that is peak idiocy right there. I mean, I'm speaking about Tolkien here. Here's another great example of that selling point thing. Empire Magazine, Galadriel for Amazon's Lord of the Rings show. Look at how much they changed her. I mean, this is not Galadriel. But right here, the actress Morfydd Clark, don't expect the same Galadriel. She says that like it's a good thing. They think that this is going to get people interested. They think changing the character, drastically changing the character, is going to get people interested in watching that show. No. Fans want to see Galadriel as Tolkien originally wrote her. They do not want to see your version of Tolkien's character that you completely changed in order to meet modern day trends, modern day standards, modern day sensibilities. Meeting this one rule of modern writing where every female character out there needs to be a strong woman, girl boss, queen. I mean, everybody hated Galadriel as she was portrayed in Rings of Power. She was unlikable, she was insufferable, and she had no resemblance to Galadriel as Tolkien wrote her. But again, don't expect the same Galadriel. To go back to the point that the writer for this article makes, for some reason believing this moment to be a selling point. In this case, they're talking about Richter Belmont for Castlevania Nocturne. But here, don't expect the same Galadriel, says Morford Clark, believing that to be a selling point. Amazon Rings of Power people believing that changing Galadriel is going to be a selling point that's going to get people interested in their show. No, it's going to piss people off. I mean, Tolkien fans, they know Tolkien's work and they know when you're vandalizing it. Okay, back to Castlevania. I mean, the people that are working in entertainment right now, or at least Western entertainment, I mean, whatever common sense is, whatever logic is, they always instinctively think the exact opposite. I mean, they think if they're going to be adapting some kind of property that has a lot of fans, they think for some reason that instead of adapting it as it was originally written, they think they should change it. They think it'll be a good idea to change it. If there are characters that have a lot of fans, for some reason they think that they should insult them, and then that's going to get people interested in their show, like this right here. Believing this insult to be a selling point. I mean, you talk about stupid. And unsurprisingly, this tweet did not go over well with series fans, especially those introduction to the series came in the form of Konami's original games, many of whom proceeded to push back against Netflix's insult. And here there's a lot of comments from Twitter.com. This Belmont slander is getting ridiculous. In what timeline or universe are the Belmonts being humbled by their companions outside of this adaptation? I don't know why these writers hate the Belmonts so much, but it's getting really old. Well, yeah, that's people in Hollywood. That's who they are. They don't respect anything that they adapt. And I say this all the time, they're not entertainers, they're activists. They're woke activists, things of that sort. That has a lot to do with it. I mean, when they adapt stuff, a lot of times they're just turning stuff into platforms for their ideology, things like that. Yeah, but one trait of these people working in entertainment, they have no respect for anything that came before them. They have no respect for anything that they're adapting. And then here, need I remind you that Simon Belmont single-handedly killed Dracula twice, and the second time he was practically on his deathbed trying to kill Dracula. These shows are written by no one except charlatans and wretches envious of the devotion the games have garnered. Y'all had one of the best things with Castlevania and you blew it. This is why people loved the strikes. You literally suck at your jobs and deserve to lose. Yeah, I haven't commented on the strikes very much. All I've really said about them is no one really misses the writers in Hollywood because vast majority of them, if not all of them, are terrible and they generally don't have any respect for anything that they adapt. Any stories that they're going to adapt to a TV show or movie, they set out trying to change them. And then here, what a strange take. I always thought the Belmont family were heroes of legend. Flawed at times, yes, but heroes nonetheless. Should viewers be hating Richter right now? Because I haven't gotten to this episode yet. And then here, we don't run this account, but I do not endorse this post. This is from Samuel Deets, the director. And then he goes on a little bit of a rant here. Now, this guy, Samuel Deets, how faithful have they been treating the original Castlevania source material? Those of you that have played the games, you can tell me more about that because I didn't play the original games, so I'm not the one who can answer that. I mean, all I really can comment on Castlevania is what I've seen in the first 3 seasons of the first Castlevania show they did, not Castlevania Nocturne, but the one that had Dracula in it, Dracula's son Alucard, and what was it, Trevor Belmont, as I remember? I think he was voiced by Richard Armitage, if I remember correctly. I mean, at the start of the show, I found it interesting. There was a lot of gore and stuff like that in there. And again, I'm just judging the show by itself without having played the game. So how faithful were they? Those of you who played the games, you're going to know more about this than me. But as time went on, there were some things in the show that annoyed me. And again, the constant swearing, I went into that already. A lot of modern phrases that kind of took me out of it. You did start to see some woke influences in there, I thought, after a little bit. And then you got to season 3, the end of season 3. I mean, things started to get a little more, I don't know how should I put it, maybe a little more R-rated. You had this one, there was one guy with a blonde hair, and he was trapped naked in a prison. Dracula was already dead, and the son Alucard, he was living in Dracula's castle on his own, and then there was this brother and sister that showed up, and he was starting to train them. But I mean, I tell you folks, the end of season 3, you started to have some R-rated stuff happen in there that just happened from out of nowhere. You had some recreational bedroom activities taking place, and it was graphic. It was real graphic. I don't know if I can say a certain 3-letter word I hear on YouTube. It starts with S and it ends in X. I don't know if I can say that word or not. But there was a lot of that taking place at the end of season 3, and I looked, I'm like, what the hell is this? Because it all came out of nowhere. And with Dracula's son, it made zero sense at all, because I think it was like the brother and sister, they basically figured, okay, this guy's on his own, this guy's lonely, so he needs recreational bedroom activities done to him, or something like that. I don't remember, but none of it made any sense, and it left me not so interested in season 4. Let's just say that. Okay, but anyway, this director, Samuel Deets, I mean, he goes on this long rant here. We do not run this account. I do not endorse this post. And he says a lot of stuff here. Man, not to vague tweet, but I work too damn much to have to add, keep an eye on marketing so they don't misrepresent our show, to my grossly oversized to-do list. And according to this, sometime after, Netflix wound up taking down their insulting Castlevania marketing attempt. And here we have Samuel Deets again. I asked them to take the post down because, for one, while I'd like to believe it was unintentional, it came across to us as baiting rage engagement. Yeah, I mean, I might agree with that. But I also think that these people in Hollywood, they genuinely think that insulting beloved characters and changing them, they genuinely do believe that's going to garner interest in the show from fans. Which I don't know how they come to that logic, but for whatever reason they do. This goes fundamentally against everything we believe, and second, it was disrespectful to the story, characters, fans, and two, it cuts off there, us as creators, Richter's story arc about his trauma, grief, the burden of his legacy, and fear of living up to it but coming out on the other side, for the people he loves and becoming the hero we know him to be, his grief over his mother's death. It's right at home with me as someone who spent the better part of a decade bottling up and struggling to process the death of my father, the guilt I felt as if there was something I could have done differently. Why in the world would I want to make a mockery of that? And he keeps going on. The burden of carrying a legacy hits right at home, too, as we try to carry the weight of the Castlevania legacy. It's heavy. We work long hours full of anxiety trying to do our best to live up to it. These are pieces of us in his story. It's not something we take lightly. Anyway, these are some things I just need to get off my chest. There's probably going to be a few people annoyed with me that I said it, but I felt like it needed to be said. Wish me luck. I mean, I'd say he's kind of saying the right things here. He's saying that he respects the source material and whatnot, but again, those of you who are fans of the original games, you tell me how much respect he's shown to the original Castlevania source material. I'm not an expert on this. I'm not the one to answer on that. Up here at the top of the article, it states here, despite the fact the series itself treats the source material with an arguably worse level of care, makes it sound like they aren't really respecting the source material. So, again, you tell me, how well are they adapting Castlevania? Those of you that have played the original games. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, if you consider hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Take care until then.